הוגש ל5 ימים, אבל 5 ימים אחרי, כאילו, רק אז כי גם הציונים גרפיים שלנו שהם באמת משמעותיים, אפשר לראות מה קורה, אבל שם רצינו לשאול את זה כדי לראות את הגרף שיצא מהעמוד למטה וביקשנו בו.
Okay, so I'm going to talk today about auditory cortex, and the first half of the lecture will be kind of summary of things that will relate directly to things that we studied in previous lessons. But then in the second half, I will talk to a large extent about studies from my lab, so it's not going to be material for the exam. After the break, so what we know, here is a rough scheme of the auditory system as we studied it in parallel with the visual system. Did you already have your lectures on the visual system? Not yet, but you know something about cortex. Yeah. Okay, so if we start at the periphery, we have the transducer, so these are the hair cells, photoreceptors in the visual system. And then we have the first central nervous system bit of the auditory system, which is the cochlear nucleus. You will see that in the visual system there's actually quite a lot of processing done in the retina itself, and in fact the third order neurons in the visual system are the retinal ganglion cells. So the cochlear nucleus, we talked about one cell type in the cochlear nucleus when we discussed the binaural hearing, but the cochlear nucleus is at the same functional position as the retinal ganglion cells in the visual system. And you will see, I hope you will see, that the retina is a very rich place with a lot of neuronal subtypes that have different morphology and that may do different processing tasks. Same thing with the cochlear nucleus. We discussed one cell type, these neurons that serve pathway, but there are a lot of different cell types. They are organized, they're well organized in space, and there's a very strong correlation between structure and function. Different neurons have different morphology, different electrical characteristics, and different connectivity. And these things go together and make sense in a way. Okay. Now, in the visual system, you go directly to the thalamus. LGN is the thalamic lateral geniculate nucleus, or LGB, lateral geniculate body. This is the thalamic station of the visual system, and from this there to V1. So people don't talk much about response properties in the LGN, and then V1 becomes the first, after the retina, V1 is the first interesting place. We saw in the auditory system that we go through very specialized processing in the superior olive, the MSO, medial superior olive, and the LSO, the lateral superior olive, and so on and so forth. And then I told you that everything goes into a place called the inferior colliculus. We saw in the lecture on the Barnard, we saw that the inferior colliculus is an interesting place. For example, it's the place where a space map is computed. So in terms of the number of synapses from the transducers, the inferior colliculus sits at the same place as V1. And to a large extent, functionally, in the auditory system, the inferior colliculus serves the same role. It has multiple parameter maps, and the space map in the external IC is one example, but people describe the number of parameter maps that are overlay each other, and in a way, the neurons in the inferior colliculus are extremely sensitive to small changes in sounds. So if there's anything that you can, any change that you can perceive, any two sounds that you can discriminate between, you will probably find neurons in the inferior colliculus that respond vividly to them. In that respect, inferior colliculus is where very good loudspeakers. This is why you can enjoy very good loudspeakers more than you would enjoy just good loudspeakers. So the inferior colliculus to a large extent serves as V1 of the auditory system, and then we go into the medial geniculate nucleus, which is the thalamic station, into auditory cortex. So just looking at this hierarchy, what I wanted to do is to give the feeling that auditory cortex is in a way a higher brain structure than V1. And you didn't learn yet about V1. V1 was serving for many years as the paradigmatic example of a sensory cortex. Auditory cortex is not like V1. It does other things, and I will try to argue that it does actually higher order type of processing.
Ellie, but is auditory cortex still processing the basic units of frequency, right? So in that sense, it's still similar to V1?
We'll see. Okay. The answer is complicated. It's both yes and no. Okay. Of course, if you present pure tones to neurons in auditory cortex, they will respond. Okay, and they have tuning curve, as you will see. But if you just keep this question to a bit later. Okay, so as I said, the inferior colliculus is kind of the V1 of the auditory system, and the question then is what happens when we go up. Okay, so if we compare inferior colliculus and cortex, we find that both ends, the thalamus, the auditory thalamus in between, we find that both have tonotopic organization. And in the cortex, this leads to redundancy. cortex is basically a square piece of tissue. Okay, the frequency is organized along one, that's fine, along one direction. This means that you have a lot of what so-called isofrequency contours. You have lines with neurons that have the same best frequency. So one question that was alive for many years and eventually died because it turned out to be not very interesting is what is the role of the isofrequency contours? Why do you need so much cortical territory to represent each frequency? Secondly, if you look at the width of the frequency tuning, what you see is that as you go from the auditory nerve to inferior colliculus, tuning curves tend to narrow a little bit. But if you record in cortex, you find neurons that are substantially wider than the inferior colliculus, more widely tuned than inferior colliculus. So this is one answer, okay? These are tuning curves of neurons in cortex. So that we saw tuning curves. This is frequency, this is sound level, and here instead of showing the spikes, what you see is a color representation of the responses. Okay, so white means that the response was not significantly different from spontaneous activity. Okay, and at each point where you had a response to a tone at a certain level, you have, which was significant, you have this colored color that represents the response. The responses in cortex in general are much weaker than in the auditory nerve. So in the auditory nerve, you would get maybe 10 spikes, 10 spikes for the best responses. Here you would get 1 or 2 spikes for the best combination of sound and level. There are all kinds of measures by which these tuning curves are similar to those in the auditory nerve. For example, this specific neuron has the Q10 of about 5. If you remember, we saw Q10s of auditory nerve fibers, and in the cat there were about 6. This is also cat. So this looks pretty much like the tuning curve of an auditory nerve fiber. However, this is a pretty narrow one. And you find a lot of the auditory neurons in auditory cortex that have much wider tuning. Okay, here the Q10 is 1.5. Okay, so many neurons in auditory cortex are much wider than in the auditory nerve. The neurons on the cortical surface, they are organized by frequency, as I told you. So this is a piece of, this shows a piece of cortex, so this is back front direction. This is ventral dorsal, so this sits on the side of the cortex, and it's a kind of a square on the side of the cortex. And each dot here is represents one electrode penetration. And the polygon is colored by the best frequency at that recording location. Okay, the polygons, this is called the Voronoi tessellation. Each line here is the transect of a line that goes between two recording points. So, for example, this line is orthogonal to the line connecting these two. Okay, this line is orthogonal to the line that connect these two, and so on. So for each, what you do is for each pair of recording points, you plot the transect of the line connecting them, and this creates these polygons. Okay. So first of all, you see that on a topic organization, units that are further back respond to low frequencies, and units that are further forward respond to high frequencies. Okay, this is the same thing except that they smooth a little bit the picture. And then, as I told you, there's this issue of what happens along the isofrequency contours. Why do you have so many recording locations that represent the same best frequency? And what they tried see here is a similar map, except that instead of plotting the best frequency, what you have is the Q10. And if you look really, really carefully at these maps, you can see that there's an area here of narrowly tuned neurons and maybe more widely tuned neurons above and below. But this is really, this requires some imagination, some coarsening of your criteria. Okay. The paper got into PNAS, but it's kind of I mean, people, to a large extent, people lost interest in the question after this paper, because basically there is an answer, but it's very weak if you go in this direction. Okay, and as we said, the typical Q10 of an auditory nerve fiber is 6 or 7, and if you look here at the distribution of the Q10s, this is the red. No, excuse me. The Q10s are the red bars. Then this is 4, so 6 is about here. Okay, so most neurons in auditory cortex have a width, tuning width that's wider than that of auditory nerve fibers, so they are less sensitive to frequency. Okay, so they do respond to frequency, they do have a tuning curve, but if you ask about frequency and you consider a tuning width as a measure of how well you do frequency discrimination, then they are worse than auditory nerve fibers. Okay. And now, all of these recordings were done in barbiturate anesthetized cats, which is a very deep anesthesia. This is a paper from my lab where we used lighter anesthesia, and the point is that these widths become even wider. We didn't, the width of the tuning curve was so wide, even 10 dB above threshold, that we didn't even calculate Q10s. Okay, we used here a different measure, but the Q10 of 5.6 would be about here. Okay, the BW10 is about 1 over Q10. Okay, so Q10 of order of 1.6 would be here. Okay, so in the lightly anesthetized cat, when they are less deeply anesthetized, the tuning width is even wider. The neuron, there's anesthesia, barbiturate anesthesia, potentiate inhibition. And so if you have less severe anesthesia, you have more activity. And so tuning widths become wider. Okay, so in terms of frequency resolution, the neurons are less good than the auditory nerve. What about temporal resolution? So the standard way to quantify temporal resolution is by the ability of neurons to follow rapid sequences of clicks. Okay, and
rapid sequences, what?
Of clicks here, like that. Sounds like this. Okay, so this is 10 per second. This is 30 per second. Okay, so neurons in the inferior colliculus don't have any trouble following such sequences at 70 hertz, even 100 hertz. Actually, in the auditory nerve, neurons would follow sequences of clicks up to hundreds of hertz. Okay, in the inferior colliculus, typically you will find repetitive responses to repetitive stimuli up to 100 hertz. There are examples. In each experiment, you find a few that do much faster than that. Okay, but when you go to auditory cortex, it turns out that auditory cortex typically follow repetitive stimuli up to 10 hertz. In extreme, this is in the cat again, in extreme cases up to 100 hertz. So this is an example of an experiment in marmosets. So this is awake. You know what marmosets are? They're small foliage, so they talk a lot. And this is a paper from the lab of Xiaoqin Wang, where they tested the ability of neurons to follow sequences of clicks. So the rate is given here not not in hertz, but in the inter-click interval. So this one corresponds to 100 milliseconds, so this is 10 hertz. Okay, this is 20 hertz. Okay, an interval of 50 milliseconds between successive clicks. Okay, and 30 milliseconds would be 33 hertz. And above that, the neurons can't follow the click train anymore. It's even inhibited. Okay, so this is typical, even in awake animals.
This is the auditory cortex?
This is the primary auditory cortex of marmoset, yes. So they can't follow sequences of clicks very fast.
So they kind of low pass filters?
It's worse than low pass filter, you see, because they stop responding at all. These guys, I mean, they have a second type of neuron, what they call the non-synchronized population, which actually increase the firing rate with increase in the click rate, but they don't lock to the individual clicks. Okay, so they don't follow the clicks, they just fire more and more and more, the more. So these guys, the non-synchronized population, look like the response to a low-pass version of the click train. Okay, but the main population of the synchronized neurons, these are seen in the auditory cortices of all animals, don't follow anything above 30 hertz. And if in rodents, it's even worse. Rodent brains, for some reason, is more sluggish than marmoset brain. So even awake rats or awake mice don't follow well above 10 hertz or so. So yeah, okay, so this shows the loss of temporal sensitivity, the increase in temporal sluggishness as you go up the auditory system. This is from a review of Phil Joris and Christoph Schneider. So each bar here represents the range of rates to which neurons locked and in one study. Okay, so you have here something like 30 or 40 different studies, and these studies were done in different places of the auditory system. So these are auditory nerves, and then you go to the cochlear nucleus, and I told you that in the cochlear nucleus there are many different types of neurons. So there are these primary light with notch, onset L choppers, causal build-ups. It doesn't matter. Okay, there are a lot of the guys that we discussed with respect to the ITB pathway are the primary light, are these guys. Okay, but there are many different types of neurons, and they all follow about the same as auditory nerve fiber, maybe a bit less well. This is superior olive, inferior colliculus, and then MGBL cortex. So you see these bars shifting. Okay, and when you do the same experiments in the nerve and in the auditory cortex, the conclusion is that auditory nerve neurons actually follow better the fast events in the sound waveform than neurons in auditory cortex. Okay. So the general picture, if you just use these standard characteristic of sound responses, is that as you go from the periphery through inferior colliculus to A1, you lose sensitivity. You lose frequency resolution, you lose your ability to follow fast events. And once I gave this talk, Larry Abbott came to me after the talk and asked me, so how can you hear with these things? Okay, so the picture that I gave you now is roughly the picture of auditory cortex as it was something like 15 years ago. people were testing auditory cortex with few tones, and we're talking about temporal resolution and frequency resolution and things like that, and they were looking for all kind of excuses for why the cortex is so lousy. The main excuse was that these are recordings from anesthetized animals, and the idea was that when we will go to awake animals, we'll see the auditory nerve all over again, but people then started recording from awake animals, and this didn't happen. Okay, so in awake animals, we have actually wider tuning curves. The temporal sluggishness is slightly better, maybe, but not as it is affected by anesthesia, but it certainly doesn't jump from 10 to 1000. It goes from 10 to 15 hertz, let's say. Yeah.
What's sluggishness in Hebrew?
Sluggishness is
ETU?
not ETU, זה לא ETU, לא רישול.
זכה כאילו?
לא, sluggishness זה...
לא מתויג, לא כבד, not faithful אולי.
Not even that. Sluggish is something that goes very slowly. Okay.
לא עוקב
Sluggish,
בצורה מהימנה.
yeah. Sluggish when it's very, very slow. Okay, so over the years, people were trying to think about in the other direction, not what auditory cortex does to simple sounds, but what are the problems you would like an auditory cortex to solve. Okay? And so presumably you need this cortex to understand speech, okay, although this is not entirely clear. Okay, so what's the computational problem with speech? On the face of it, speech is quite simple. Okay? You have a limited set of sounds. Okay? Phonemes. How many phonemes there are? Do you know? In all languages together, how many phonemes there are?
400.
How much?
Like 30?
200.
30, 200, about 100. I mean, that's Hebrew is relatively poor. It has only 5 vowels, and it has a relatively small number of consonants, but if you take all languages together, you have all kinds of funny phonemes that, for example, people say that in Thai you have 3 kinds of plosives. So you discriminate between b, p, and th. Okay? I never heard anyone talk Thai, so I don't know. But some of you might.
And also in Hindi.
In Hindi, possibly. There are languages in which you have sounds that you create by actually sucking air. We are only creating sounds by pushing air out. So you have sounds that are created by sucking air in, some African languages. So there are all kinds of funny sounds, but even if you take all of them together, you end up with about 100 sounds. And remember, speech is for communication, so these sounds are made to be discriminable. Okay? And in addition, you have a lot of redundant information. So sounds would be different from each other along many different parameters. So in principle, speech should have been easy. You probably all know that speech is not easy, and the reason, to a large extent, is context. Okay? The speech sounds are defined by information scattered over many frequencies. So this already creates a problem, because the first thing we do when we process sound is to break sound into the frequency components. So this means the difference between sounds are going to lie on different auditory nerve fibers. You can't use a single one in order to do discrimination. But then you have also temporal context. And the same bit of, these are experiments that people started to do in the 50s and early 60s, they realized that sounds are more complex than they thought. Speech processing is more complex than they thought. And one experiment that they did was to take bits of sound, put them in different temporal contexts, and people would swear that they sound different. The most famous experiment is one in which neutral bit was used, BT, okay, bit. And it was put in sentences in which it had to be bit, back, but, and so on, and people perceived it as being the word that should have occurred in that context. But this can be done, so this is a 60s kind of experiment. This can be done today in a much more controlled way, and the effects are really surprising. Okay? These contextual effects on auditory perception are very strong. And finally, specifically for speech, you have this issue that you have sharp perceptual boundaries, so-called categorical perception. You can change a lot physical parameter and the sound will sound the same, and then you change it a little bit more and suddenly it changes in quality. So you have this issue of generalization, but not only generalization, not only the fact that many sounds are the same, although they are physically different. My your twice, when I say twice my it will be different, and so on and so forth, but you hear them as the same thing, but also you have these sharp perceptual boundaries.
Which different parameters?
What?
Which different parameters?
For example, the so-called voice nonsense time. So this is the thing that distinguishes between be and pe. In Hebrew, in be, the voicing starts before you open your lips, and if you start voicing after you open your lips, then it's pe. In English, the boundary is slightly further in. So in English, if you start the voicing with the opening of the lips, then it's be, and you need to wait a bit for it to be pe. But in either language, this is, by the way, one of the elements that make British English accent English. Okay? And this is why when we try to, Hebrew speakers, when they try to mimic English speakers, would unvoice some of the voice consonants. So one way that we try to mimic English accent is by saying pe instead of be. We had to say be. Never mind. Anyway, in either language you have a sharp boundary.
In English.
Yes.
On the first lesson, he said, and it was hard for me to accept then, that one of the big differences between the visual system and the hearing system is that in the visual system we complete information all the time, or we don't do it as much in the hearing system.
No, I didn't say that. What I said is that the basic phenomenon, the basic operation in vision is occlusion. Okay, whereas in hearing, the basic operation that occurs in the ear is linear sum of the sound. It's like transparency.
Just the example you gave about the BT, for example, I mean, isn't it kind of the same? Like kind of the same.
No, because there was no occlusion there. It was just one thing. We'll get.
There is sometimes we hear
It's not. We'll get to the issue of what happens when you have multiple sounds at the same time in a moment. Okay, but my comment was about what happens when you have multiple visual objects, and the comparable thing would be when you have multiple auditory objects. Of course, you complete information. In all senses, you complete information when the information is ambiguous or absent. Okay, but the basic physical operation in vision is occlusion, and in audition is summing up. That's peripheral. It doesn't have anything to do with the fact that you complete information later in the brain. It's physical. It's not in your processing. so here's space. So we talked about space. We said we do space by interval time differences and interval level differences. And then I told you a few words about spectral shaping by the external ear. And again, this would imply that putting a pair of microphones on a robot and calculating these things, you will get the direction of a sound source. Should be easy. Turns out that it's not. And again, spatial information is defined by information scattered over many frequencies. You will have ITDs at each frequency. You have somehow to disambiguate them. There's temporal context. Okay, the most famous example of temporal context in space is so-called echo suppression. Echo suppression actually occurs in this room. I told you that when you hear me, most of the energy that you hear comes from the walls. Okay, but you don't hear these echoes. Okay, you don't receive these echoes. What you hear is my direct voice. So this is called precedence effect. The fact that you don't hear the echoes, or they don't have a perceptual, separate perceptual existence is called echo suppression. These are roughly the same thing, but actually, if I will put new reflectors in the room, when you change, for example, if you change the location of furniture in a room, the room suddenly sounds different. And it sounds different because for a short while you hear the echoes again, and then you get used to the room and you suppress the new echoes. And the reason is that you get used to echoes from the certain direction and you learn to suppress them. Okay, so if the room now changes, you have now new reflective surfaces at different places, you suddenly hear these echoes until you get used to it and you suppress them again. Okay, so echo suppression shows temporal context sensitivity. And again, you have generalization. Many different sounds are the same. You don't have categorical perception in space. Okay. However, the real hard part of space is not neither that nor that. It's the fact that you have multiple concurrent objects. Okay, and this is where this problem of linear addition comes in. If you just take a frequency band and calculate the ITD of a certain frequency component of the sound that reaches your ear, it might include contributions from many different sounds. And so the ITD in each frequency band will not be the ITD of any of the objects that are in the scene. Okay, so the big problem is when you have machines that try to identify direction in space by hearing, the real hard part is when you have multiple sources of noise around. Just as a kind of funny story, a few years ago we had here a visit of Dan Lee, who's doing robotics. So they had robots that played football. For a while there were world competitions for football teams composed of robots, and they were competing in these games. And he told us about the issues that are involved and how you solve them. And then it turned out that they don't use, they do have microphones on these robots. These were robots that were produced by Sony. They look like dogs. For a while, Sony was producing them, and 5-6 years ago it stopped. Also, these football world championships also stopped. They had ears, but they did not use the ears, and the reason was that it turned out that they're essentially useless. They were communicating between these robots by Wi-Fi, and they had as a backup, if the Wi-Fi network would crash, for backup, they also had the vocal communication between them. But it turned out that it was extremely difficult for one of these robots to know where another one was by voice because of the issue that there were so many robots at the same time producing, even if they would not vocalize, it would make noise. Okay, so space with multiple concurrent objects is really difficult. Okay, and this leads us to the issue that actually it's not only space or speech. In a way, we tend, when we perceive a scene, we pass the auditory scene into the sound sources or auditory objects. Auditory object is a very it's a term that has been that has as many meanings as people who use it. We don't really know what an auditory object is, but introspectively, I mean, you hear the sound and you hear me and you hear separately the things that occur outside and separately the noise of the air conditioning and so on and so forth. So we pass the auditory object scenes into something. And in realistic settings, there will be a number of these objects. Again, as I told you, there is a big discussion in many people in the community think that we should talk about auditory objects, but no two agree about what it is. So, on one extreme, you could say that an auditory object is the sound emitted by a sound source. Okay, but there's good reasons to think that this is not good enough. For example, if you have a loudspeaker, you play the radio through a loudspeaker, sometimes the loudspeaker plays music and other times it's speech, and these are obviously different things. Or alternatively, people talk about the perceptual entity. However, if you talk about the perceptual entity, then you have a kind of circular reasoning. This doesn't have much explanatory power. So it is unclear where between the physical entity and the perceptual entity you should position the auditory object. And in realistic settings, before you even say where a sound comes from, you need to know that there is sound. Okay, so in a way, the segregation and grouping of sound components into objects should occur before we say whether it was speech, which type of speech, where it was, what was its pitch, and so on and so forth. And auditory grouping, like all the rest, is wideband and depends on temporal context. Okay, so that was a very long introduction. I will not go very far here, I see. So what do we need auditory cortex for? Presumably for this type of task, but I will start just before the break. I want just to show you that at least rats can do quite a lot without auditory cortex. So this is an experiment in which rats have been taught to discriminate between upward and downward cheers. So, okay, these are the two sounds, and we had to. I don't remember now exactly the task, but it was they had to lick when they heard one of the sounds, and not to lick when they heard the other. And I don't remember if they got a punishment or not, or it was just a timeout. And then the animals were trained, and what you see here is performance as a function of session. So each session is a day. Okay, they were put in the training apparatus, they got trained, and then the next day they were put again, and so on and so forth. And 0 corresponds to a child's performance. Okay, the y-axis is the difference between correct and incorrect responses. So 0 is child's performance, and this gray bar represents the range of performance of normal rats. The point of the experiment was that then they lesioned the auditory cortices, quite extensive lesions of auditory cortex, and these are performance of Rett, you take right lesion and left lesion and bilateral lesions. Okay, and the paper claims that you need auditory cortex to do that because when you do the lesions, you have a reduction in the performance, and it looks like right lesion affects performance more severely than left lesion. Okay, so presumably you need right auditory cortex to do this task. But there's an elephant here. Okay. And the elephant is the fact that although these rats with both auditory cortices lesions did less well than their intact friends, they still did the task far above chance. Okay, so the rats, first of all, they hear. Obviously, not only they hear, they did the task. Okay, so rats hear without auditory cortex, and they can do quite sophisticated tasks, at least if you consider this to be sophisticated, even without the auditory cortex. Okay, so this is very typical. Okay, you don't need auditory cortex in order to hear. Yes?
Can you make sure that there is not some other sense in rats that maybe perceive? I mean, when we hear a very low frequency, but the bass, we feel it too. We don't just hear it. So
yeah. So very very low frequencies you hear both through your somatosensory, through your internal organs, and through your vestibular system. But these were high frequencies. So it's not. Presumably, it's not that. They believe that it was not. By the way, what would be the experiment you would run in order to check that?
Also,
You can put earplugs. Yeah, you can put earplugs, for example, and check whether they can do the task or not. The fact that animals with quite extensive lesions to auditory cortex can do quite sophisticated auditory tasks is not new. Okay, this is well known. Okay, people started. I mean, the first thing people did in the 50s, after auditory cortex was localized, was to do lesions, and until today, people don't have good notion about what type of tasks are. I mean, there are a number of tasks that go wrong when you do this, which become worse, but there's no good identification of the class of tasks that would go wrong when you lesion auditory cortex. They have to do spatial localization, for example, is affected by auditory cortex lesions, but even there the story is not clean. Okay, so let's take a break, and then I will tell you why we do need auditory cortex.
Does anyone use more complex methods like optogenetics? I know that
We'll get to the end of the lecture. I'll show you a bit of optogenetic results in our lab. One thing you know to do precisely is to inactivate the whole of auditory cortex and see what happens on a moment-by-moment basis. Much of the lesion studies has the problem